It began not on a red carpet or in a palace, but in a quiet room. No flashing cameras, no royal titles, just a circle of familiar faces, people who had known each other for years. Among them sat Serena Williams, calm and private, the kind of woman whose silence often speaks louder than words. The conversation was light, easy, laughter soft and unforced. It was the kind of evening meant to be forgotten. But then came a whisper, "What is the real age of Meghan?" It cut through the comfortable air like glass. It wasn't about tennis or fashion or the royal life one of their friends had married into. It was something far smaller and yet infinitely more explosive. At first, no one reacted. It was just a piece of trivia, a floating piece of data. But when those words finally reached Serena's ears, something in the room shifted. Her expression froze and her body leaned back, ever so slightly like a calculated retreat. And then came the question, quiet, but so heavy it seemed to steal the air from the room. How did she have kids? It wasn't asked in anger or spite. It was pure, unadulterated confusion. The kind of question that doesn't just ask for an answer, it challenges reality itself. It makes you wonder if the story you've been told, the story you believed, was ever true at all. And because it came from Serena, a woman synonymous with discipline, grace, and unshakable composure, it couldn't be dismissed as gossip. This was instinct. And her instinct hit that room like a shockwave. The energy changed. Smiles faded. And suddenly, Meghan's picture-perfect timeline didn't feel so perfect anymore. What would make someone like Serena Williams, who has known Meghan for years, question something so fundamental? What did she see? What did she know that the rest of the world missed? If you're hearing this, you're likely someone who notices when the pieces don't quite fit. And what I'm about to show you is a chain of inconsistencies, a series of cracks in a flawless public facade. A mystery that begins with a simple question about age and spirals into something much, much darker. To understand Serena's disbelief, we have to go back to the beginning, to the very foundation of the story we've all been sold. According to the official biography, Meghan Markle was born in August of 1981. She graduated from Northwestern University in 2003 at the age of 22. It's a clean timeline, neat and tidy and fits perfectly on paper. But that's the problem with neat stories. They rarely survive contact with reality. Deep in Northwestern's archived yearbooks, there's a photo. It shows a young Meghan Markle, smiling in the back row of the university salsa club. She looks bright, confident, carefree, just a college student. But when you look closer at the people standing next to her, people who appear again and again in her circle, in club announcements, in alumni newsletters, a strange pattern emerges. Public records show many of them weren't 21 or 22. They were born in the early 1970s. Some had finished high school as early as 1988 or 1989, almost a full decade before Meghan's supposed 1999 graduation. These weren't random acquaintances. They were her circle and her friends. So, if Meghan was truly 22 in 2003, why was she constantly surrounded by people nearly a decade her senior? This is where the first crack appears. When a public figure's story doesn't align with the documented record, it's no longer about rumor. It's about evidence. And if Meghan was actually born earlier than claimed, it changes everything. The pregnancies, the timelines, the photos. A simple biographical detail suddenly becomes the key that could unlock a very different truth. Serena knew that. She's known Meghan for years, stood by her side through milestones and headlines. So when she heard that whisper about Meghan's real age, her mind did the math instantly. The numbers didn't line up. Her question wasn't an accusation. It was the instinct of a champion who can read the court before anyone else. In that moment, her disbelief opened a door no one in that room wanted to walk through. Because if the age was off, then so was everything built on top of it. But the age was just the first thread. And when you pull on one thread, the entire tapestry begins to unravel. When Meghan's pregnancy was announced, the world celebrated. It was a royal fairy tale, a beacon of new life. Magazines ran glossy covers. Cameras followed her every step. But behind those beautiful, curated photos, something strange was happening. Something the human eye instinctively senses is off. In some pictures, her baby bump sat high and perfectly round, a textbook pregnancy. In others, taken just days apart, it appeared lower, smaller, almost as if it had shifted overnight. The changes weren't subtle. They were obvious, captured by professional photographers, archived for history. And then came the moment no one could unsee. A video clip, one that spread quietly among keen observers. Meghan, smiling brightly, lowers herself into a chair. And for a single, breathtaking split second, the curve of her stomach seems to fold. It bends in a way that seems physically impossible. It wasn't a trick of light or fabric. It was a movement that defied biology. The official explanations came quickly. A camera angle, lighting, fabric tension. But the footage was there. Replayable. Undeniable. Once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. What made this even more compelling was Meghan's own constant, deliberate choreography. In nearly every public appearance, her hands would find their way to her stomach, cradling it, presenting it, as if the bump itself was the centerpiece of her identity, an object that needed constant protection and attention. That single, folding video clip became more than a curiosity. It was the first visible crack in the image of perfection. And when paired with Serena's question, that crack began to look like a chasm. But sometimes, the truth doesn't come from documents or videos. It comes from people, not the ones in front of the cameras, but the ones standing just outside the frame. The quiet observers who see everything but are paid to say nothing. Whispers began to drift from those inner circles. Small details, shared in confidence, never meant for public ears. An event planner recalled watching Meghan backstage, late in her supposed pregnancy. She moved with an easy, fluid grace. No stiffness. No sign of the fatigue or the careful, protective posture most expectant mothers exhibit in the final trimester. Another insider mentioned they had never once seen the bump uncovered. Not in dressing rooms. Not in private fittings. It was always shielded by fabric, kept at a distance, even in spaces that should have been intimate and unguarded. Individually, these accounts could be dismissed. But together, they formed a quiet, consistent pattern. A pattern where the pregnancy was not a private experience, but a carefully managed, visually choreographed presentation. The evidence was building. Serena's disbelief. The shifting bump. The impossible video. The hushed accounts from backstage. And then came the moment that left even medical professionals stunned. Because what happened next wasn't just unusual. According to experts, it was nearly impossible. Just days after giving birth, Meghan appeared before the cameras. This should have been a time of private recovery. Instead, the world watched as she stepped out, polished and radiant. She wore a fitted dress, not the loose, forgiving clothing postpartum bodies require. She walked in high heels, with steady, confident steps, no shuffling, no protective hunch, no visible signs of the physical trauma of childbirth. Medical professionals watching from afar could only comment quietly. The recovery, they noted, was remarkably fast. Impossibly so. Even with the best care in the world, the human body needs time. It's a biological reality. But for those connecting the pieces, this didn't look like recovery. It looked like a performance. A perfectly staged moment designed to answer questions before they were even asked. The perfection was the problem. Because perfection in childbirth doesn't exist. It's messy and exhausting and real. This felt like a presentation. By now, the puzzle had too many missing pieces. Medical records? Kept private. Birth certificates? Shrouded in questions. Hospital staff? Bound by ironclad confidentiality agreements that went far beyond standard practice. Every avenue that should lead to clarity led instead to a locked door. Behind palace walls, loyalty was everything. Speaking out wasn't an option. Careers and reputations were on the line. So, silence became the official policy. Not denial, just silence. No statements addressing the inconsistencies. No explanations for the timeline discrepancies or the physical impossibilities. The strategy was simple. Repeat the official narrative through authoritative channels until it becomes the only story people remember. Alternative questions are dismissed as fringe thinking, as conspiracy. The public, for the most part, moved on. The photographs were beautiful. The statements were official. The fairy tale had its happy ending. But no palace statement can erase what has been observed. No photograph can explain the video that folded. No official biography can change the yearbook records. No amount of media coverage can make the math work. The questions remain, hanging in the air, unanswered. And so we return to that quiet room. To the moment Serena leaned back, her expression frozen, her instinct screaming what the world was not yet ready to hear. She has known Meghan for years. She has been there for the milestones the public never sees. So when she heard that whisper, her mind processed it instantly. The math didn't work. The timeline collapsed. Her question, how did she have kids, wasn't the start of the mystery. But it was the moment the mystery became impossible to ignore. It connected every inconsistency. The age discrepancy, the shifting, folding bump, the staff who never saw what they should have, the recovery that defied medicine, the institutional silence that buried it all, for words that transformed scattered doubts into a single, unavoidable question. The world may never get an official answer. The truth exists somewhere in private records, in memories bound by contracts, in a reality too complicated to ever fully emerge. But the question persists. It echoes. It lingers. It started with a whisper about age. A detail so small, most would ignore it. But once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you notice the timeline doesn't work, once you watch that video, once you hear those whispers, you find yourself back in that quiet room with Serena, leaning back, and asking the one question that changes everything. How did she have kids? The world may never know, but some will always wonder. If this journey into the shadows of a public narrative made you question what you see, then you're who I make these videos for. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we're just getting started. The truth is out there. I'll see you in the next one.